So, today, in this story of radical, those guys lived radical lives. And we, as Christians, are called to live differently than the world. Some interesting stuff has happened in the news recently. Even some things have happened that aren't so cool. Justin Bieber got arrested yesterday. Claims to be a Christian. Prays before every concert. We have these people that are celebrities that are claiming to follow God, but at the same time are not living their lives towards Him. And they're living like the world. God calls us to live differently, to live radical lives. You see, I got the Jenga game going here. I've been playing. I'm pretty good at Jenga. It's one of my favorite. It's up there in the top 10 favorite games of Jonathan, which is kind of crazy because I don't have this game at home. But if someone were to say, "Hey, let's get together and let's play Jenga," I'd be like, "I'm in. I'm good. You're all going down." And I would talk trash. Now, the fact is there a lot of skill in Jenga? No. Can you have to have a steady hand in Jenga? Yes. But if you kind of shake a little bit, it's not so good. And so I set this up, and I've been playing. I've been moving some pieces here and there, and I've been getting more and more. The tower's getting taller. Ooh, it's moving. No. To be a true Jenga player, if you touch a block, you're supposed to move it. But I'm not doing that today. So in the game of Jenga, it's this tower, obviously, and you move pieces to get higher and higher, and whoa! Snap! So it fell. Kind of a bummer. But in this, there's something to be learned from this. You see, in this, there's this tower that was built. And it was, and you build it taller and taller, and you move pieces to kind of move it up and up and up. And the point is, if it was my turn and that just happened, I would have lost the game. The Bible talks about stuff like this. Proverbs 16:18 says, "First pride, then the crash. The bigger the ego, the harder the fall." So, if you had this huge head, okay, not being like literal head, but this ego head, that your head is so big, and you brag about yourself, and I'm the best, I'm the greatest, I'm the all-time number one, you are in for a large crash. And I don't know a single person that is able to talk like that and not have a backslide or a fall, according to the Bible. The only one that I can think of is Jesus. Jesus says, "I'm the Son of God." Jesus says, "I have come to seek and save that is lost." Jesus says, "If you've seen me, you've seen the Father as well." He said these things to kind of show and kind of say that I am God. Now, he didn't have this huge trumpet sounds every time he went to a town. He only did that at the end because he was going to die. He didn't have this army around him. The disciples were far from guys that were army guys. And that's why you see Peter slice off a guy's ear when he's trying to defend Jesus. It's like, seriously, Peter, you got his ear? Of all the things you could have hit, an ear. So, pride comes before the fall, okay? I did a little different version because I liked how it worded it. First pride, then the crash. The bigger the ego, the harder the fall. This fell from the third row, okay? Only 2 rows here are set up. From the top, the very base, it fell, which means there's a lot more for me to pick up. which means that my foundation is rocked. And that is true about when we have pride. Now, don't get me wrong, self-confidence is good to a point. Because self-confidence to a point, it shows that I have things under control. But if you go too far, it becomes pride. It becomes arrogance. It becomes things that sway you to the opposite side that make you go to the wrong place. And you become God instead of God being God. The same is true what happened in King Nebuchadnezzar. In chapter 4, he has another dream. He has this dream that there's this very tall tree, and it towers above everything, and it looks awesome, and it looks healthy, and everything looks great. And underneath it, there's all these creatures that have come to to live underneath this tree because the tree is so great. It has got great tree branches, it's got great leaves, it's got great shade, it's got life, it's got food, it's got everything that you would want underneath it. But what happens is, in his dream, it gets cut down. And it doesn't just get cut down, it gets cut down from the base, and there's this little stump of it, and the cutter takes off all the branches, takes off all the leaves, takes off everything and makes firewood out of it. The animals scatter, everything is gone. And the king wakes up from this nightmare and he's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what just happened. I need to get this under control. So he calls back all of his guys to interpret what this dream's about. And so he comes to Daniel. And Daniel comes to him and he says, King, you're not going to like this. I'm going to tell you what it is. Don't get upset with me. But here's what it's about. Daniel chapter 4, in verse 28 says, and this happened to the king Nebuchadnezzar 12 months later as the king was walking on the roof. So Daniel interprets it, and this is how it gets fulfilled, right? So he's walking on the roof of the royal place of Babylon. He said, is not this a great Babylon I have built? Big head, okay? That I have built as a royal residence by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty. Okay? Majesty is him. The words were still on his lips when a voice came down from heaven. This is what I decree for you, King Nebuchadnezzar. Your royal authority has been taken from you. You will be driven away from your people and will live in the wild with the wild animals, and you will eat grass like cattle. 7 times will pass by for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over the kingdoms of men and gives them to everyone he wishes. Immediately, what had been said about Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled. He was driven away from people, and he ate grass like cattle. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven until his hair grew like the feathers of an eagle, and his nails like the claws of a bird. Okay? Kind of crazy. All right? Crazy stuff happening here. He's starting to look like an animal. At the end of this time, Nebuchadnezzar raised his eyes towards heaven, and my sanity was restored. So he gets a picture of this and he looks up, acknowledges heaven, and then praises the Most High and honored and glorified him who lives forever. Okay? Because before that, he acknowledged that he was true, but he didn't acknowledge that God was the one true God. And now he is. His dominion is the eternal dominion. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the peoples of the earth are regarded as nothing. He does as he pleases, and the powers of heaven and the peoples of the earth, no one can hold back his hand or say to him, what you have done. Verse 36, at the same time that my sanity was restored, my honor and splendor were returned to me for the glory of my kingdom. My advisors, nobles sought me out, and I was restored to my throne and became even greater than before. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt the glory and glorify the King of heaven, because everything he does is right and all his ways are just. And those who walk in pride will be humbled. Will be humbled. Pride goes before the fall. He had this moment. He had this dream. He was interpreted by Daniel. He even said, whatever. And then it's fulfilled that everything gets taken away from him. And God was gracious enough to restore him to the place where he was, and some. Wow. That was amazing. And so you see this, and you see how awesome this is, because now he didn't just acknowledge that God was God, but now he acknowledges God as the one true God, most high, and says, if you don't follow him, you're going to be humbled. If you know that those who walk in pride, he was able to be humbled. Wow. You would think that this went through his mind and rocked him, and it was like, yes, I believe it. I'm going to turn and I'm going to go in your ways, God. But no, that didn't happen, and you're going to have to come back next week to see what happens next. God continues to show himself in crazy awesome ways to show Nebuchadnezzar that he is the one true God. If you were here on Wednesday, you heard me say that this is another one of those God moments. We're talking about pride here. And you're going to go to small groups and you're going to talk about this. But the crazy thing is, we talked about this and it was lined up to talk about this week. But on Wednesday night, we were talking about the red stuff. Looking at the New Testament and what Jesus said, the red words of the Bible, and what he talked about different subjects. And in line and in this order, Wednesday night was talking about pride. And here we are Sunday morning talking about pride again. I tell you what, this is not a coincidence. God is trying to get our attention about how we interact with other people. Are you quick to brag about yourself? Are you quick to brag about the things you've done? Ultimately, God says that we are to brag about him only and what he has done. I like doing things, and I like to do things with people. And I like to, by myself, it's not as fun. But when I get the chance to do stuff with other people, it's more exciting. And I get to show them, different things that I've done or different things that excite me. And that's awesome. But at the same time, sometimes I admit that I brag about cool things that I've done. And I apologize about those. Because ultimately, I want to be about God, and I want to be about what he tells me and what we're to be about. To live radical is to live different than the world. And to live different than the world is to not brag about yourself. It's to brag about God. Let me pray, and we're going to go to small groups. Lord, I pray that we would boast and boast in you alone.